And welcome back to you all to Our Africa with myself, Matabelo Moloi. Well, failure is regarded as part of the process of innovation, perhaps the most important one of it. Well, this was the case of a certain Alpesh H. Patel, who documented his failures in his book titled Tested.
I like cash, I like bread and dough, longer and dash and I told you so.
Alpesh H. Patel was born in Uganda and often considers himself as a bush baby.
Hi, my name is Alpesh H. Patel and I'm one of the original African entrepreneurs. Built MyPhone, the first African mobile device brand from 2008, and we also introduced Oju, the world's first black emoticon character brand. And I put all my learnings and experiences into my new book, Tested, where we say the dream is free, but the hustle comes at a cost.
His story is quite interesting, from how his grandfather moved to Africa and how they ended up being refugees, having to forcefully leave Uganda to start up a life in the UK.
So just to, just a quick brief on the story. Basically, we're one of the original refugees. So we were kicked out by Idi Amin from Uganda in 1972. And we were told to move to the UK with no money. So we basically had to start from scratch. And I think that builds a strength of resilience in you, and I think it builds a strength of having to survive on your own. In 1990, I managed to sell 183 phones to China. I was one of the first guys to sell phones to China. Now they're selling everything back to us, and I lived in Hong Kong for 6 years, and that's where I made my first $1 million just by selling phones to the Chinese. So I hadn't even come back to Africa then. I only came back to Africa in 1997.
And there's nothing in my way, I'm a money maker, and I know just what to do.
Patel was a millionaire at 23 and still somewhat managed to lose it all. Now a lot more matured and established as an entrepreneur, he has since decided to pen down a book about what not to do in the world of business, titled Tested.
So Tested, I like to say, for all of us, from the day we're born to the day we die, what happens in between is a series of tests. Some of these tests we pass, but most of these tests we will fail. So my book is a collection of tests that I've been through over a 30-year journey, more so about the art of entrepreneurship, being tested in the art of entrepreneurship, being tested in the art of the hustle, and also being tested as, for being a man. As men, we get tested every day. So I wanted to write about that within the context of business, but it's not a business book.
He reiterates that as an African, the odds are against us, as there are a lot of hardships that one faces while trying to make it as a business person.
Well, first of all, survival. At the end of the day, we've got to pay our rent, we've got to eat. So you could go out there and get a job. My first job was at the age of 33. From the age of 18 to 33, I was a solo entrepreneur, and then I went into the corporate world. So as challenging as the entrepreneurship world was, the corporate world was also very challenging. And then I set up, after having been the director of Motorola for Africa and Middle East, in 2008, I set up MyPhone, which is the first African devices brand. I set that up in 2008. And that in itself was a really, really big test for me, because basically I decided to jump off a cliff and try and build a plane on the way down. And the test was, what do you do as an African entrepreneur, or rather an entrepreneur in Africa, where you have no ecosystem around you, there's no funding, there's no mentorship, there's no advisory, you are basically on your own. So the test was, how do we build this brand? And we did. We were in 17 countries, we've done more than 5 million devices.
He eventually sold his business to have cash flow, despite the success of his MyPhone business.
I had no choice. I was desperate for money. Not so much for me, but for my business. I'd knocked on more than 100 doors, private equity, venture capital, angel investors, family offices, all across the world, London, New York, Hong Kong, everywhere. Everyone said no. And finally, I managed to sell 51% of my business to a public listed company because I needed the capital in the business to take it to the next level. So you know, it was very, very challenging. Even the sale of the business was very, very challenging, and I write about that in detail in this book. Just to show people that, you know what, just because you sold your business doesn't mean I've flown into the sunset in my private jet. The reality is far from that.
Well, it is actually proven that for one to attain greatness, they have to be stubborn with their goals, yet become very flexible with their methods. For Africa to succeed, innovators have to believe in themselves and not lose hope.
It was, as Nori was saying, beautifully done.
Even though at first one does not succeed, they should be flexible and try different methods as an alternative. For years, Africa has relied on handouts, and perhaps that is one of the mentalities we ought to change.
But I think the one that's got the biggest impact is not thinking big enough. You know, I come across a lot of great ideas that are solving really important needs, but one of the big challenges that I think we often overlook is because we're so focused on solving this problem, we forget to think about the commercial viability on a bigger scale. If you look at places like the US and Europe, a lot of those ideas, yes, were solving a need locally, but fundamentally were able to scale commercially.
We do wrong, number one, when we succeed, we think it's our money and we just want to go buy cars, we just want to spoil ourselves, which is fine. It's okay to spoil yourself, but just give yourself a salary. Even when you think your business is starting to make money, then maybe you can start getting an allowance. I'll make you an example. My company is 4.5 years old, 2.5 years in the market trading. Started selling my first can January 2015. MoFi is running now. It's going for 5 years and it's going for the 3rd year in the market. I've never made a single cent out of MoFi. You know, we keep the money revolving around the business. We keep throwing it back into the business. We're building our balance sheet. Nobody takes salaries.
The biggest problem in Africa that we have as Africans is our minds are very small. We have a scarcity mindset instead of an abundance mindset, right? We want to be the king of our village. A lot of people in Africa, they want to be big fish in a small pond. But we have it in us to be big fish in a big pond. Why do you want to now just be the king of Gauteng with your product offering when your product is so good? You could probably scale it to Africa, you could probably scale it to the world. We've got to create solutions for the world. Let's not just create solutions just for Africa. Let's take African innovation and take it global. That's what I believe is going to increase the prosperity of Africa, is for us to start believing a bit more in ourselves.
Many of the continent's success stories were not accessible in the past, but that has since changed with our new entrepreneurs who have decided to document their journey to inform those who are considering venturing into business.
Yeah, I mean, it was a bit of a labor of love writing the book, but I think what prompted it was, firstly, I don't think we document enough as Africans, let alone young Africans. I don't necessarily think my story is unique or special, but I think it's important that I was able to document it. I often tell that to people, and I thought to myself, if I go around telling people that they don't document enough, I should be able to document it myself. So that was the first thing. The second thing was, after having my first child, I started to realize that there's a big generational gap between myself and my father, as an example. And there's a lot that I wish I understood and I knew, and that he was able to share with me. And I realized that if I didn't document a lot of the stuff I went through, I might have the same challenge with my son.
The reason why I did this book was to do an entrepreneur's handbook of all the case studies of all the work that I've done. When I speak about TS Records, people know. When I speak about Mzega Zega, people know. When I speak about Zahara, people know. When I speak about Massive Metro, people know. When I speak about getting fired at Metro, people know. When I speak about MoFi, people know. Those are visible case studies that relate to South Africans, and I feel a lot of textbooks or a lot of business schools are not relevant to the young people right now who want to become entrepreneurs. So I wanted to put together a book like that. Not just a book about my biography and my life, and this is where I come from, this is what happened, yes, but use that as case studies where one summarizes them and make them relatable to the actual reader. And then the reader relates to my situations, and then how are they relevant to their own lives and how they can better their lives. And every chapter I've summarized it into what I call your biggest problem is. And then I give out bullet points on how you can better yourself. So I think it's one of the best books I've ever written.
It's important for one to realize that the secret to getting ahead is getting started.
I think the most important thing is to just start. I mean, it's so difficult to stress that enough. There's a lot of amazing ideas that people have. There's a lot of talented people sitting in corporate environments, and 9 out of 10 times the challenge is you're just not able to start. There's a book called 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel, which speaks about this notion that there's a lot of ideas that sit in our heads, and ideas are actually really low value until you've done something about that idea, or at least gotten into the first step. You can't really build momentum or create any equity. So I think that's the first thing that I'd say, is just start. Leading up to just starting, I think be very deliberate about the plans you make financially, from a social perspective, the loved ones that you bring on the journey with you. Be deliberate about that, because that kind of stuff doesn't just fall into place, as they say. But if you're not going to be able to start, you actually won't be able to get anywhere.
The future for me is seeing Massive Metro become the biggest radio station in South Africa, and also having it have other radio stations. I'm seeing a KZN Massive Metro with local talent. I'm seeing an Eastern Cape Massive Metro with local talent. I'm seeing a Limpopo Massive Metro with local talent. We are having a vision of having 5 radio stations by the year 2025, which is about 7 years away from now. And the future for myself is obviously building an African Coca-Cola. I'm not building an energy drink. I'm building an African Coca-Cola. I'm seeing a Mofire Cola, Mofire Grape, Mofire Cocoa Pine, Mofire Orange, Mofire Ginger Beer, Mofire Iron Brew, etc. Mofire Water, Mofire Juice. It's beverages, right? Now these people have bought into me. I can sell them anything. They bought Mzegezege. It means we could sell them Brown. They bought Ntown. It means we could sell them Pro. They bought Bricks. It means we could sell them Zahara. I sold them music. It means they can buy my books. If they're buying my books, it means I can sell them drinks.
Well, I wouldn't say follow my footsteps, because this is a how not to do things, right? So don't follow my footsteps, but learn from my mistakes, learn from my failures, so that your processes can be fine-tuned. You can then fast track to your chosen destination in a much quicker manner than what I did in 30 years. If you have the right idea, you have some traction, this book will teach you how to choose the right people, how to give credit to certain people, how not to give credit, how to scale your business, and how to create value in your business. Because ultimately that's what what entrepreneurship is all about. It's about creating value.
Well, that's a wrap-up of this episode of Our Africa. We do hope that you did enjoy it. Well, do remember that the best way to predict the future is actually by creating it. From myself, Mathapelo Moloi, and the rest of the Our Africa team, till we meet again next time. Cheers.